We are talking about following Jesus on the Jesus path for the 21st century. JP 21 is our shorthand for this. And we're right now looking at what I'm calling Jesus's way of ways, the various things that he did himself and he taught his followers to do that would expand their minds, give them the bigger mind, help them move into that bigger mind, move into the bigger heart, help them to embrace the bigger world, and thus lead the bigger life, which is the kingdom of heaven, or the realm of heaven, as I like to call it, the realm of heaven that Jesus talked about. And so today we're talking about the way of acts of charity. Acts of charity. Now, first off, we have to stop and we have to think about the fact that every human society has come into existence as a result of the cooperation of humans with one another. You know, our culture makes a big thing out of competition. But as a matter of fact, what holds us together is actually cooperation. Human beings are more characterized by cooperation than they are by competition. So what this has meant over the millennia is that people contribute their talents, their abilities, and even material substance towards the security and the sustenance of the group or society as a whole. But every society has also had to reckon with the fact that not everybody is able to contribute equally, and that some members of its groups are more vulnerable than others, whether because of their age or because of disability, injury, or disease, or the artificial categories of status in society. So the giving of alms arose in societies around the world, as a means for those on the margins of society to be able to survive. So when Jesus speaks about giving alms in the Sermon on the Mount, in the scripture that we heard just a few moments ago, he's presupposing the fact that almsgiving was already a part of Jewish piety and practice. He doesn't need to make a case for it. There's evidence, in fact, that the group of disciples who traveled with Jesus not only received monetary support from others, but also maintained their own fund for giving to the poor. But there were other forms of charity as well. And charity, the word charity, comes from the Latin caritas, which means love for all people. You see, Jesus' ministry was characterized by his compassion for all the people with whom he came in contact. He helped people in whatever way he could to find greater purpose or hope, to be physically made well, and to be restored to their family and friends. He engaged in a ministry of healing, teaching, and casting out demons that drew throngs of people everywhere he went. So the work of charity, or love for all people, was rooted essentially in compassion. For instance, Matthew 6:34, we find these words: "As he landed, he saw a great throng, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd." Now, the Greek word that we translate as having compassion is vivid. It literally means to be moved deeply within one's gut. Compassion was not an intellectual concept to Jesus. It was a direct, visceral experience that was the result of meeting people face to face and being open to their needs and their struggles in life. You know, he literally felt their pain and desperation and responded out of the resources that he possessed, either materially or emotionally or spiritually. Matthew summarizes his activities this way. Many who were demon-possessed were brought to him, and he drove out the spirits with a word and healed all the sick. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. He took up our infirmities and carried our diseases. Matthew 8:17. So works of charity that are based in compassion are the manifestations of God's presence in the world. And think about that. Works of charity that are based in compassion are the manifestations of God's presence in the world. This is because, and I can say this, because as the writer of the first letter of John proclaims, God is love. So when we're acting out of love, out of compassion based in love, we are bringing God's presence. We are manifesting that presence that is love in the world. So the writer of the Gospel of John declares that it was because of God's great love for the world that Jesus was sent into the world to manifest and to actualize that love in very specific, concrete ways. So all acts of charity that arise out of human compassion for others are rooted, therefore, in the nature of God. And there are ways that the love of God moves from being just a concept to becoming a living reality. So the caritas that is based in the path of Jesus is not about finding people who are worse off than us, nor is it the attitude of, there, but for the grace of God, go I. The caritas of Jesus is that we meet Jesus in whomever we serve. And that's important to understand. You see, we are serving others. Any act of reaching out in compassion is an act of discovering Jesus embodied in the other. Whenever you've done it to the least of these, you've done it to me, he says, helping us to understand this. In fact, what happens in this act is we discover that when we love our neighbors as ourselves, we are actually expanding our sense of self to include the other. Our neighbor, this person with whom we are engaged, is a part of our own selves. We are included as a part of their self, and they're a part of ours. So every act of charity, of kindness, of assistance, of advocacy for others actually affects the whole of humankind because we're all connected. We all share in one garment of destiny. Each choice we make every day weaves the world we will awaken to tomorrow. You know, a number of years ago, a movie came out that had a profound effect upon how we think about this notion of helping one another. It was called Pay It Forward. It was based on the book by Catherine Ryan Hyde. Perhaps you remember it. In the book, in the movie, Reuben St. Clair the teacher protagonist of the book, starts a movement with this voluntary extra credit assignment. That is, goes like this. Think of an idea for world change and put it into action. Well, so Trevor, the 12-year-old hero of Pay It Forward, thinks of quite an idea. He describes it to his mother and the teacher this way. He says, you see, I do something real good for 3 people. And then when they ask how they can pay it back, I say they have to pay it forward to 3 more people each. So 9 people get helped. Then those people have to do 27. He turns on his calculator, punches in a few numbers. Then it sort of spreads out, see, to 81, and then 243, then 729, then 2,187. See how big it gets? The way of Jesus recognizes that the world is not always the way it should be. But it also recognizes that we have made the world the way it is. And since we have made it this way, we can also unmake it and make it to be different. So I invite you to try out the Pay It Forward challenge this week and every week after. What good can you do that will make somebody else's life a little better, or maybe a whole lot better? What would a happier, healthier, and more compassionate world look like? And how might you help it get that way? And how would you do it so that not even your left hand knows that your right hand is doing it? Amen.